I'm going to give the floor now to uh, Paul Egnankou, who is going to talk to us about male women and who is going to talk about how power play happens through food in Abidjan. The subject that I would like to present and share with you today as you already heard, is called Male Women and Power Play Through Food in Abidjan. So this is an analysis through the trio of gender, food, and city. And as far as the place is concerned, it is the city of Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire. So since the political independence of Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan, which is the economic capital, but uh, has actually developed extremely fast in terms of infrastructures and economic activity. It has the biggest port, for example, of Western Africa. There are roads that have been constructed, and commerce is very much developed there. So this dynamic in terms of development means that has affected, of course, in a very positive manner, the population of Abidjan, which went from 2 million in 1998 to 4 million in 2014, and then went up to 5.5 million in 2019, according to the general census. So in this context, the city of Abidjan has become, of course, a hope, and a lot of rural populations have immigrated into Abidjan, especially for women, for the sale of food products. They not only sell tubers and vegetables and fruit, but also fish, products of fish, of hunting, of animal raising, as well as cooked meals. So the socioeconomic environment is also very much a place of unequal gender relations. In homes, you have symbolic violence with very unfavorable behavior and opinions being pronounced on women. And then, of course, this what underlies this is the sociocultural and economic inequalities based on gender. And this has been talked about in the World Bank report in 2012 and 2013, as well as by the Ministry for Family, Women and Children and Social Affairs in 2012. Now, for these institutions, these inequalities actually that are linked to gender can be explained by socio-cultural burdens and stereotyped social reports. But we have to go up to the end of the 18th century and early 19th century, where in the contacts with Europeans, you have an exchange of lots of products, including food products, like you had palm oil, and for the and other products as well. And in these exchanges with Europeans, women were excluded from this trade with Europeans, because it was the men who went out to meet the Europeans. And little by little, once the French were established durably on the coastal areas, you had a lot of plantations that were developed: coffee, cocoa, uh, oil palms, and rubber trees. And within that, women were excluded because it was the men who had the resources. They were allowed to have land resources and to manage them. And when you talk about plantation economy, obviously, especially as far as oil palms and rubber trees are concerned, obviously means that you also need to set up factories, and so there again it was for the treatment, of course, for the processing of the products, and there again it was men that was chosen and not women, of course. So now women are therefore confined to making food or making meals in for their households uh, the rural in the rural areas. But with the cities coming up, women were able to emigrate to the cities and take over a certain economic um, sector, like for example, by making teke, which is a cassava flour that is very much in demand in Cote d'Ivoire. So uh, this and yet this domination of women in street food has never really been documented, very little documented, and so we and so we are going to do that, and we are going to look at the socioeconomic challenges that underlie this. Now, the a few as far as the theoretical approach is concerned, in my communication, the building of the social um, this new social role of women was done with this idea of the identity of genders that is plural and polymorphic. When we speak to women, very often these women are illiterate, and they haven't been to school very much. They've been excluded from the formal economy. They cannot hold salaried jobs, and very often you have widows, you have women who have been remarried, or whose husbands are going through a crisis. Either they are very sick, or it could be that they are unemployed because of the economic crisis that started in the 1980s, and that is still carrying on today. So in this category of women, uh, we have we we have the studies of Ferrand and Bourdieu, who say that the building of the sex is a ideological construction of masculine domination in order to legitimize the inequalities of sexual, social hierarchies, as well as the hierarchy of labor division between the genders. Uh, so a lot of women are now uh, challenging these binarity by building a sort of masculine femininity, which is and therefore they become a sort of social space of claims and of protest by taking to themselves this inversion of sex. So the binary identities of men and women, we have therefore it has been inverted and left and led to this mm, this of course this we have also had the techniques of um, using hormones or surgery to change one's sex, but this is so this is just a transformation of oneself in order to try and find a harmony between the image of one's body and the identity that these people are living through. Now, in terms of identity, we heard about this yesterday. There is a certain uh, uh, inequality between the way meat it can be accessed between men and women. And during this study, we've seen that there are certain bans placed by men, and therefore they have maintained this tradition of the domination by men. So any analysis of the gender has to obviously also look at the power relations that make it possible. So 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 we so this is an epistemological study to look at how exactly women have decided to leave behind their identity that was decided for them, within which they were confined. And so we are going to look at this through how male women have inverted this. And in the in Cote d'Ivoire, in the popular language, when you talk about male women, they also talk about tomboys. So women who have, of course, uh, who will do their chores, do their cooking, have their children and everything, but they have a certain character, a certain personality, which ensures that they can carry out tasks and do things that normally men would do. So there's this notion of uh, male women or boy women. Now, in terms of results, we have to speak a little bit as well of the context within which these male women emerged. So, as we said, from the essentialist point of view, women's role in Africa is to feed their men, to look after their children, and to look after the house. And the man's role in as the head of the household is to look after the main expenses of the household: health, pay electricity and water, look after the school fees for their children, etc. But during a period of economic crisis, you have this kind of inversion that is produced, a sort of reshaping, a statutory reshaping of women, and that makes them into what we call male women. So first of all, it happens in the villages, in the rural zones, given the inequality of genders. So the rural women need leave behind their territory, their village, and and go to the urban centers in order to find a better life and also a new identity. Instead of being somebody who is dominated, they want to become the dominators. And very often this happens in Abidjan, because in Abidjan you have it's a very cosmopolitan society, and you can live in a kind of anonymity, which confers upon you a social invisibility. And we also people choose Abidjan because this city no longer has the traditional socio-cultural structures, and that means that these women who come in can decide to occupy positions in whichever sector they choose in food, either selling food or selling cooked dishes. And of course, this is all activity that generates revenue. And although we can see that there are inequalities of gender that do persist in Abidjan as well, depending, because they have less access to healthcare, they have less access to social contributions, and social help from the state, but and these women therefore tend to be marginalized. They also suffer from a different kind of inequality, which is access to inputs for production. For example, they don't have access to credit. They cannot take any decisions in their households, and they can't have access to politics. Very few women get into the public function or a political function. So, during times of crisis, these women which may have happened because their husband falls sick or because there's an economic crisis, they decide to invest and work in urban food. So this, when I talk about male women, I'm not referring to tomboys or women who have a self-identification as being a tomboy, or who prefer to play games outside rather than to do something in the house. This is nor are these women who have undergone any kind of biological or hormonal change in their bodies. These are adult women who are married, who have households, but who take on this masculine character in terms of behavior in order to be able to have an economic activity. Now, what is interesting is that these women, instead of shrugging off the social stigma of being a male woman, on the contrary, they adopt strategies of diversion in order to actually assume and call for uh, this status of male women. And so this means that they reappropriate that stigma, and they will go out and work in the food sector where they've been confined. So they, because of their identity and because of their positioning, and because of their evolution in space, in their evolution rather in space time, they do what they can do. So the resources that are mobilized by these women when they are reconstructing their social status is actually based on the fact that they leave their villages behind and go into urban centers, the fact that they have activities that bring in revenue, income, and therefore they have financial autonomy. And this process is actually based on human relations, their know-how of cooking for the urban sector. So it is these parameters that, within these parameters, they manage to invert the the power politics. So this power play can actually be seen in, or is actually exercised in what they call outside, and the outside is the markets of Abidjan, which show very clearly the dominance of this category of women. So the activities of these male women are very often based on food, and they show you have groups of women that have structured themselves into cooperatives, and we hear very clearly that it is actually illiterate women who did this. For example, Botilu Rosalie, or Nantilou Rosalie, or Zamble Lou Madeleine, who all come from the Guro ethnic group, and with very little money, they created the first cooperatives for selling um, uh, food in Cote d'Ivoire. And these women, like men, will work outside, so in the markets, in the streets of Abidjan, just like men. And the success of these first examples that I have just quoted to you will, of course, encourage other women to leave their villages and to come and live in Abidjan with, of course, the agreement of their spouses for a few months to come and join these groups. Now, the power of governance of these cooperatives is actually very firmly in the hands of these male women. So one of them says, here it is women who have created the cooperative who take the decisions, and we follow what they tell us to do, so that, sorry, let me repeat that. Here it is the women who created the cooperative who take the decisions. We follow what they tell us to do to ensure that our activities go well. They are our elders, our mothers. They have more experience than we do. And another quotation here: we are all related, we are all part of the same family, because the Guru ethnic group, there are many of us in the cooperative. Even with other ethnic groups, we understand each other and we help each other. When there's a problem, we with the people from the municipality, we actually, it is our elders who solve these problems. So it is therefore this capital that is the source of the power of these women. It is the fact that they are elders, that they are mothers, and then other members of the cooperative. There are also men there who are in a minority. There are very few of them in these cooperatives. And then you have the positioning of other actors, other professional actors, and that does not constitute a counterweight to the taking of decisions in the cooperative. Actually, the law on cooperatives is quite flexible, and it says that there should be professionals, that's qualified players who have a certain cultural capital that is recognized by the state, or certain resources, in order to set up uh, these cooperatives and to manage them. But those people are only there to advise. And it is actually, in actual fact, it is these women, the mothers and the elders, whose decisions always are respected. What they say is what is done. And this is how the cooperative is regulated. In terms of risk, these women, of course, have to leave their homes in the villages for the whole week, and they only go back in the weekend, on the weekend. So they say it's at 5 a.m. in the morning that the wholesalers give us their products on credit. So cassava, bananas, aubergines, etc. We have to pay them back the next day. Which means that as soon as we've received the products, we have to sell them, and sometimes we do that up to 6 p.m. or sometimes 7 p.m. And since there are the guardians there, we can sleep on our stands right up to the dawn, and then we start again the next morning. So we go back home only on the Saturday evening, and then we come back on Monday morning. So this is really, these are actually, normally it's men who take these risks, but here it's the women who take the risk of sleeping in the market, on their stands, on their stalls, to even taking the risk of being attacked or being robbed. Another thing that is really characteristic of these male women here is that Côte d'Ivoire went through about, Adola, we've reached the end of the time that you had. So could you please conclude? Okay, thank you very much. So just to conclude, I think we can note that the inequalities of gender that legitimize the marginalization of women with the domination of men has been rebuilt, reconstructed by these women. And therefore, they have left their villages behind. They have gone into the urban spaces. They've left their households and gone to work in the markets or in the streets in order to carry out activities that make it possible for them to take themselves in hand financially, but also to carry out actions and have behaviors that are sometimes that so far had been the field of men. So there you are. Now, if you have any questions, of course, I can answer them if there's anything that I haven't been able to talk about. Thank you very much.